Hello, welcome. I'm starting from the same place I was starting from yesterday actually. So yeah, welcome to my channel, Velo Fan. On this video I'm going to be reviewing my ownership of a Yamaha MT-09, which I've had for about 3 years, I'm going to say. It's definitely over 2 years, it's probably 3 years. So let's start with why I bought the bike. So I had previously my GSXR 600, which I owned for I think it was about 13 years, and I put 55,000 miles on it. All my miles, you know, happy days. But because nowadays I don't ride as often, I found that every time I went out on that bike, my hands were hurting. It's not so much my wrists. Everyone says about their wrists and their back for a sports bike, but for me it's my hands. Primarily the clutch hand, just absolutely killing me. And I got into classic bikes whilst I still had the 600, and I noticed that the setup position is obviously very comfortable. And so I was kind of thinking, well, do you know what, maybe I have to admit my age and all the rest of it, it's time to get a sit-up position bike. So yeah, anyway, and a mate of mine years ago, he had shown me a picture in a motorcycle magazine of an MT-10, but it had these luminous yellow wheels and grey tank, and I remember seeing it and thinking, wow, looks great. So I then started looking at those bikes a little bit, because my mate had an MT-07, and I thought, oh, okay, you know, and I wanted a triple, and that's why I settled on the MT-09. And I found that the MT-09 was available in that same colour scheme, yellow wheels, grey tank, and I was like, right, well, I'll tell you what, that's going to be the bike for me then. I never saw one in real life. I never saw the one I bought in real life until after I bought it. So I bought it, it was sometime around when we were dealing with lockdowns and COVID, and so I couldn't, well, legally I couldn't go and travel to see the bike because it wasn't essential travel. I think that's what it was worded as at the time, and it was quite a far away location. I couldn't be asked, so I just paid for a bike courier to bring it to me, and I paid the chap. Obviously I got it off of eBay. I was always a little bit concerned, is it ever going to turn up? But no, anyway, bike turned up, kind of seemed all good. When I first rode it, I was like not impressed. The handling was horrendous. I was like, this isn't good. You know, I've come off of my really old 2003 Gixxer 6 to a 2017 MT-09. So I thought, right, what about the tyres? Yeah, okay, pressure was a bit low, so I inflated the tyres. Instantly better, like, wow, yeah, that's better. But the rear tyre had a real big flat on it, just obviously perhaps a lot of main motorway dual carriageway use. So then the next you know, kind of thing to see what was going on with the handling was new tyres. So I got new tyres, which I'm running Maxxis tyres. Now a lot of people will probably shy away from them. I mean, not many motorcyclists use them. They're quite cheap, or they used to be. I don't know, I don't really keep an eye on prices, but they used to be quite cheap. And years ago my local garage started stocking Maxxis tyres and was promoting them big time. And I whacked a set on my Gixxer 6 and I was impressed. I was happy, grip, you know, whatever, everything felt good. So that's why it led me to get a set for this MT-09. But like I say, they're not a popular brand, but I also was riding trials push bikes, bicycles back then, and they had Maxxis tyres, and I was like, well, if they can make tyres for push bikes, they could do motorbikes, although I guess it's not really a great comparison. Anyway, so yeah, so I'm on Maxxis tyres, which, like I say, may not be everyone's cup of tea, but having sourced brand new tyres with a decent actual round shape to them, the handling was greatly improved. Like I say, it was the flatted off tyre, I think, that was previously putting me off, and the fact that they were underinflated. That was the biggest issue, the underinflated issue. So yeah, so that was good. to improve the handling. The other thing I've fitted, which I'm sure I've spoken about in one of my other videos, is my steering damper. It might be a cheapo one, but it has improved. Again, I class it as handling, but yeah, it's improved rideability of the bike, because I found that I'm going to try and rip it through here. There's cars coming the other way, but it'll be alright. Yeah, because the front end, I thought, and this is another part in detail relevance to the review, is that I felt that the front end was particularly light. Everyone obviously says these bikes are for wheeling, or not for that, but they're up for it. So yeah, so I did find that the front end was particularly light, and I didn't like it. I was really surprised that a bike this new didn't come with a steering dampener as standard. You know, my Gixxer 6 was from 2003, had a steering damper fitted from standard stock, no extras, just that's how it comes. So yeah, yeah, I was a bit surprised it didn't have one. But so yeah, I fitted one. That, like I say, that has improved things no end. So I would advise anyone that's interested in owning an MT-09 to perhaps consider it. Not everyone likes them, I guess, and I haven't seen any fitted to other MT-09s that I've since seen. So maybe they're not that great an add-on, but I like it anyway. Yeah, so I hadn't seen the bike in the flesh. I was just going off of the basis that, like I say, I kind of know a bit about Yamahas. I've had a few in the past, and they're meant to be a good bike. So anyway, got this one. I was keen on the triple because, like I mentioned in my video I did yesterday, by the way, it's Mother's Day today, and I'm out on a Sunday on Mother's Day, and yeah, there'll be some views on that. But I just kind of thought, fuck it, like it's going to be less. Well, kind of hope there'd be less people on the road, but it's obviously not working out that. But I kind of assumed people would be just hanging out with their mums and stuff, and maybe going for walks. But yeah, maybe because I'm in the forest, that's probably where they all come. But anyway, so yeah, it's Mother's Day, south of England, 2023. It's not that cold. It's pretty good actually. It's not rainy today, which is good because yesterday I got covered. So yeah, so I wanted the triple because I quite like the Triumph Street Triple. However, I don't feel that this Yamaha MT-09 triple sounds as triple-y as a Triumph Street Triple. I think the Triumphs have got a real triple sound, and they sound bloody awesome. And I thought, oh, I'm getting a triple. Yeah, fuck it, it's going to sound the same, but it's not quite the same. And I presume that's to do with the way that it fires. Now, obviously, they have this cross-plane engine thing, these Yamahas, and the R1 I think is apparently a true cross-plane. This one here is called CP3, I think it's called, the engine. So it's meant to be cross-plane free, cross-plane triple. But I don't think, because of that firing timing, if you like, it sounds quite as triple-y as the Triumph. So that to me is a slight disappointment. One of my observations. There you go. So yeah, but they do sound nice. You've got quite a nice gurgle off the throttle. I think that's pretty cool. So then let's have a think about the suspension. So they're quite often referred to the MT-09 as having a poor rear suspension, and yeah, I don't know really. I mean, I think they say it's too soft, right? When I got mine, it was set to, I think, the hardest position on the rear. I've since rotated it back off one. I've gone off one, maybe off two, but I think off one, so slightly softer. And that's because I felt that perhaps it's the damping issue as opposed to the shock issue. So like, because I felt that it was quite jarring, because they'd obviously whacked the suspension on the rear right up to maximum. Perhaps the previous owner was heavier than I am, I don't know. But I felt they'd done that because they've got such a reputation for having a poor, weak back end suspension, and I felt like they've just whacked up the spring thinking, oh, that's going to help. But I found it was just a bit too, yeah, I can't really explain it. It's like my Gixxer 6 had a real solid suspension, front and rear, and it was really nice. But I didn't feel that it was kind of jarring, and like I say, I can't really explain that. Maybe it just had a much better damping effect on the rear shock on the Gixxer. So yeah, so I've slightly softened that actually, personally, for my taste. But one thing I did notice was in corners, when I was like winding it on, it was a bit wallowy on the back end, and that I didn't like. I never had that on my Gixxer. My Gixxer was always planted. So yeah, I was a bit like, no, this doesn't handle as good as a sports bike, but it's not a sports bike, so maybe that's another thing to factor in. Front suspension, very good. Very happy with that. So let's talk about brakes. Brakes are another one that come into the handling and suspension and what have you. So front brake, real good. I'm happy with that. Rear brake, bit shit, but I think most bikes are. I don't expect any better. I'm quite happy with that. But the front brake's definitely adequate. But I have been only owning old vehicles. Like I say, the Gixxer was 2003. That was my newest before this bike. So the other bikes are ancient. So I guess you can't really take my word on the brakes, but I think they're good. So anyway, yeah, brakes are pretty good. Now then, the styling and looks I think are bloody awesome. I love them, and I haven't taken the mirrors off, but I probably will do at some point. I appreciate they detract from the looks and the styling. But one thing you can add to these bikes is a little bit of a windscreen, bikini fairing. I don't know exactly what the hell it's called, but a little thing up the front there. Which I haven't done, only because of the looks. I really like the way they've styled the front headlight on this particular model. Like the older model, I don't like the headlight, and the newer model, I don't personally like the headlight, but that's obviously personal taste. So I like the way this headlight looks, kind of quite aggressive and this and that, and so I didn't want to add the fairing, right? So yeah, but the one thing I've noticed is that when I'm going at speed on the dual carriageway, the wind is pulling me off the bars. So this bike, I'm going to say, is an all-rounder. I'm going to say it can do everything, especially if you don't want to break the speed limit. I would say it's absolutely perfect for everything. It's a good all-rounder. It's a comfortable bike to ride and all the rest of it, right? But if you go above 75, 80, if you're spending hours at 75, 80 on the speedo, I don't know what that is in real speed, but I think it's uncomfortable. The wind's pulling at you and you're really like trying to hold on with this normal sat up position. If you tuck in, obviously that mitigates that to quite a certain extent, but so yeah, so you could consider fitting one of those little fairings, I feel. But like I say, I think it then kind of detracts, because when you look at the Tracer version of this bike, which ostensibly they're the same bike, I think, but the Tracer one's obviously got that massive fairing. I don't know, man, but I just don't think it looks cool. I think it looks what it is for, but if you want a certain styling, then it's not great. So anyway, yeah, I would say that yes, you could fit, or might want to fit the fairing, but I haven't wanted to do that. So yeah, so wind pulling you off is a bit of an issue with this bike, like I say, but if you go really, really fast, let's just assume you're on a track. If you're doing like say 100, 120 mile an hour, I don't find it's that bad, to be honest with you. But that's because you have to tuck right down. So when you tuck right down, you're kind of out of the wind, aren't you? And you're probably not doing it for a long, long period of time. So yeah, so we got that. Right, another thing that I think about this bike. Right, value for money. I think, personally, bloody awesome. Oh, hello, fuck. Didn't expect to see this Ford here. I haven't been down this road in a long, long time. But there you go. And that's another thing I'll talk about in a minute with my tail tidy and the fact I get fucking soaked. Right, value for money. Yeah, I think it's bang on. You got a Japanese bike, not a fucking Indian or Chinese or whatever. You got a Japanese bike, manufacturer. Like I say, I don't actually know for fucking certain where these things are made, but I'm going to assume they're made in Japan. Perhaps some of the components aren't. Yeah, value for money is great. I mean, like I say, I was looking at buying an R1, and the price tag for that was monstrous. And then you looked at what the price tag was for one of these. Yeah, absolute bargain. And I can't knock it. I think value for money is bloody fantastic. So if you're eyeing up, or some mate's going for a slash, fair enough. Yeah, if you're eyeing up an option for a bike that's got basically sports bike performance, power, torque, whatever, but for a budget price, yeah, they are good. I would absolutely, yeah, support someone buying a MT-09 any day of the week. Fuck me, this is going to be bad. We got a lot of cars. I could potentially turn left and then I can go down and round. There's a bit you can come back on, so we'll have a look in a minute. Anyway, we'll stick it out for a minute, see how we're getting on. Yeah, value for money. Like I said, I'm very impressed with the value for money, and so that's one thing. And like I just said then about this tail tidy, right? So that's the next thing. So the original styling has this thing, like I said, this like arm thing, which comes off the rear swing arm. That's got a little mudguard on it. It's a bit ugly, I suppose, and previous owner to me fitted a tail tidy, so I've left it in place. But whenever it rains or the roads are even wet, like yesterday, it wasn't really raining, it was kind of a tiny bit of drizzle. But the back of my jacket is bloody soaked, the back of my helmet's caked, and you'll see in a minute when I a nice one there. That was another MT, not quite sure, I think it's MT-10. Yeah, when I get off at the place I'm going, where I'm hoping there'll be a load of bikers down there, there usually is, but it is Mother's Day, you might see the back of the saddle covered in shit. So yeah, so if you want to go tail tidy to make the bike look a bit nicer, be aware of that if you're going to be an all-rounder, all year rounder rider, probably not. Yeah, I don't know, I just think it's worth sticking with the original, because at least it probably saves your back getting fucking soaked. So yeah, it's a tail tie, so there you go, there's that. There are other styling options that you can tweak this bike with. So anyway, on to the electronics. So I've never owned a bike before this with the level of electronics on it. My Gixxer had electronics, I suppose, but I can't remember any of them being anything. There was nothing on it. I'm sure it was absolutely like just, I don't know, like what you can explain about it. It had electrics and such, but anyway, there was nothing. Fucking loads of bikers out, good on you. But this bike's got, right, so like I say, my old bike had jack. Let's just say I've never had a bike with electronics. That's the best way of putting this. And this bike has got ABS. Never had ABS on any bike I've ever owned. It's got ABS. It's got traction control. It's got the quick shifter fitted. Never had a quick shifter. It's got, what else has it got? It's got like power modes. So it's got 3 power modes, and I've never had power modes before. I prefer a bike to be like designed by the manufacturer as either, it is what it is. It's either out and out sports bike or it's mellow or whatever. But to have the power modes, yeah, okay, good little feature, I suppose. It's not all that programmable type stuff. I saw on the R1 they had although they had maybe even 5 power modes, even within each power mode you could then adjust all this different stuff. And on this you can't. I think you just select sort of like 1, 2, 3 effectively. You can also select the traction control sensitivity, which I think is really good. So I think mine's TCS2 on the thing there on the screen. So traction control 2, I guess. I think can't remember. I think 1 is the most intrusive, 2 is less intrusive, and I guess the third option, which is off, you don't have it on at all. And I've got it on, but it's not mega on. So I've occasionally felt it where I'm trying to pull away, there's a bit of gravel or whatever. What it felt like was that I think I felt it was like my clutch was slipping, but it wasn't. It was obviously actually the way of it dealing with loss of traction. So that's a lovely little benefit that these modern bikes nowadays, they have all this extra gizmos to help you ride a beast like this. On the subject of a beast, so it's an 850cc mine. The later ones, they are 900s. But, mate, I'm telling you, like I said in my video yesterday, I have got no reason to want to have anything more powerful or bigger or this and that. I'm happy to try and ride them, and I'm happy to go and have a look at what it's all about. But it fills my needs, is what I'm basically getting at. The torque on it is unbelievable. So when I pull away, it's just instant bang. My Gixxer 6, yeah, it was only a 600, but the torque, I don't know, it just didn't feel it was like that. The lower revs, because it revved a lot higher than this does, didn't feel that much grunt, and you had to sort of wind her open a bit, and then it would really rip it, because obviously the power. And I think that these two bikes, I think my Gixxer 6 and this bike are the same power, I think. but the torque on this bike is definitely well in excess of my Gixxer 6 from what I remember. Obviously don't ever quote me on any of this shit, this is all my only personal opinion, this is not professional review, and also someone else is going to have a different opinion on whether they like these bikes or not, so they might have different versions. They might say, oh, it's got no power, it's got no torque, but for me it's got bloody loads of torque and it just instantly rips it on, you know. And so I always try and think of it in my head as a liking between owning a petrol car and a diesel car, because when I had a petrol car that was quite revvy, and then I went and got a diesel, the diesel had power from the word go, but it torque rather, but it didn't have that top end power, and so it feels a bit flat in the top end. This bike, I mean, I probably have redlined it a couple of times, but so I can't really say, but I would say it doesn't feel like you hit a certain revs and then it really kicks in like perhaps a sports bike might do. So yeah, so I think it's more similar to a sort of diesel grunter than a like I say, a peaky. I mean, it only redlines at what, 11,000 revs, maybe 11 and a bit, let's say 11 and a half, be generous. The Gixxer, I don't know, I seem to remember it's like 16,000, I can't really remember, it might be 14, but I'm pretty sure it's like 16 or so, it's mental. So yeah, so I believe that this thing as a bike has got all that you need, you know. So yeah, there's that. For the power and torque, I think it's adequate. I'm trying to remember all the other things I was going to say about the bike. So yeah, so there's one other thing I want to mention. This is an issue that I've got with the bike, and I'll actually cover two issues now, or concerns. So this is a definite issue for me personally, but everyone else may have never experienced this. But I did Google it and found it was it must be a common fault, because everyone else was talking about it as well. If it was just me, I wouldn't find nothing about it. So what it is the start button is that red thing over there. You probably got to see it in this camera shot. And I don't actually like that, to be honest with you. I'm used to start button that you push with your thumb, so you can have your hand on the throttle and you can give it a bit of a twist if you want to as you fire it up. This one you've got to sort of pull that back towards you, and I find that's less easy. I basically can't grip the throttle and operate that at the same time really, but that is not the issue. That's just a thing. The issue is, when I've left the bike for, let's say, 2 weeks, let's just say 2 weeks, right? Because it's not like I've left it there for bloody months and months and months. So let's just say 2 weeks. I turn the key on, it all does its normal thing. I can hear the thing priming the fuel pump. I pull that red start button thing and nothing happens, okay? It just doesn't do anything. I let it go back to its resting position. I pull it again and it fires up. Every time it does that. It's never like, oh, third time or whatever. If it doesn't go on the first one, it always goes on the second one, which I think is a bit strange. However, my car started doing that the other day. It was like a second crank, but it made like a bit of a click. You could hear it try to crank. I can't remember if this bike does try and do anything, but I just know it doesn't start. I can't hear anything spinning around, nothing. The starter it doesn't go. So yeah, so that weird thing of how, like say, it's got this thing whereby the first attempt doesn't work. That fault, that issue has been mentioned by others, and the other people that have mentioned it have reported it to Yamaha. I guess they were within their warranty period or something, and Yamaha's answer was like, no, that's not a fault because the bike starts. So their attitude was pretty much like, well, because it does start on that second attempt every time, that they didn't acknowledge it, they didn't admit it's a problem, they didn't want to deal with it. But the weird thing is, so it did it for me, like I say, a couple of times or however many times it was doing it every time. Every time I left the bike for a few weeks, it would then not start on the button. So it did do that, right? But now it doesn't. So I don't know what's changed, other than maybe I've been using it a bit more often than was previously. Don't know. Right, just noticed my speed is, so I'm going to pull in it. There we go. Yeah, but it doesn't do it anymore, so I just don't know what happened there. But that was a bit of a concern, a bit of an issue. I was like, fucking hell, I've got I've got a modern bike that I've bought for the sole purpose of reliability. I want to take it out for a ride. There's going to be no fucking about. It's just literally turn the key, turn the button, start the beer, it's going to start. So yeah, that was a bit disappointing, and to see that other people have experienced it as well. So anyway, so that's something I did notice. That's a little MT-07, I think. Happy days. So yeah, so that was one of my issues, right? And other people have experienced it, but like I say, it's currently not doing it, and it always did start on the second attempt, so it's one of them. Right, so anyway, I'm nearly at the destination, so I'll be trying to round up. There's loads of things I didn't mention that I wanted to mention. Yeah, MT-07 there, look, only a 2-cylinder, that's why I didn't buy it, but I think it's way better on fuel, so way more fuel efficient. Should have probably got one of them. So the next thing is, like I say, it's a little bit of a concern. My garage, that after I bought this bike, I took it to for an MOT whenever that then expired. He said to me, oh yeah, great bike, strong engine, you know, lovely, da 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 da. But the one thing he said to me that, like I say, is a slight concern. He said, oh yeah, when those bikes get to, and like I say, I'm not really certain what the mileage was. I think it was 12,000 miles, right? So he said when they get to 12,000 miles, let's just assume that's what it was, they need their valve shims adjusting. He said everyone that he's checked at that kind of mileage for the service, whatever the service was, they actually needed them adjusting. And I think he said they tighten up rather than go loose. I think he said they're tightening up or whatever it is. Not really sure, but that was a little bit of a concern, because I was like, oh fucking hell, like I don't want to, you know, I just haven't got the budget at the moment, so I didn't want to be having to deal with that. The bike had really low miles when I bought it. I've whacked on a few couple of thousand or whatever. So yeah, so that was a little bit of a concern, and the fact that he said it's been on every one that he's dealt with. So yeah, so anyway, I'm hoping that mine isn't going to need the valve shims adjusting. I'm also hoping it's something that I could potentially do myself. Although with my old bike, the Gixxer 6, I didn't get involved with doing valve shims. I don't know why. I think I just didn't like the idea of it, trying to work out what position the crank needs to be in to actually measure the gap. So I mean, like I say, I have done quite a lot of work on my old classics I've got, so we'll have to have a look at that. Yeah, like I say, I'm just trying to remember the other things. So I wrote down a list of things that I thought I'd like to mention in the review of this bike, but I'll probably not hit on them, just because, like I say, it's just, you know, I'm just sort of doing my ride and ramble, and I just don't necessarily have everything to hand that I'd like to mention about these bikes. But you know, bottom line is, honest review, I've had it for 3 years. It's been really good. You may have noticed from my videos that I don't actually use the quick shifter very often, and that's probably because I've never had one before. So I've never had one. So when I first got this bike, right, this is another interesting thing of a review. So I was trying to change up with the quick shifter, and it felt like it didn't want to go into gear. Like it just felt like it was just, yeah, it just wouldn't move, it wouldn't shift up. Unless I was really caning it, and that then made me think, oh fucking hell, this is a bit shit. So since then I've ridden with another mate, and he had an MT-09, and I listened to his shifting, and I was like, hang on a minute, he's shifting up and he's not really gunning it without using the clutch. So yeah, so I realised that you just need to be on the throttle. So when I was trying to shift up, I was rolling off the throttle, so I was accelerating, but I was rolling off as if I was doing a normal shift with a clutch, and that just doesn't work. I think when this shift doesn't work for downshifting, which a lot of bikes nowadays they do work for that. This one's only for obviously shifting up. So I think when you're off the throttle, it just stops it from working like that. So yeah, so I've learned that as long as you're on the throttle, you don't have to be actually ripping it open. I found that I can actually hold the throttle dead constant, so I've accelerated, I'm still accelerating, but I'm just like holding the throttle in a solid position, and then I click up with the quick shifter, it works fine. So yeah, so I think that's one little thing that I've learned with a quick shifter, just because I've never had one. So just, yeah, and you see like now I'm using the clutch, see, every time I'm using the clutch. I'm used to riding a bike with a clutch, I quite like it. So yeah, that's the thing, I don't really need the quick shifter. It does come as standard, like I say, on this bike, so you know, you got to take advantage of it. I think if you were trying to race someone, you'd be wanting to use it. Does benefit you in that speed or acceleration. But yeah, the overall, like I say, the overall review, because like I say, I'm just aware of the fact that I'm coming to the end of my ride now, but I'm just going to hopefully as well when I get here show you some of the bikes that will be here, because I've not you know, not pre-arranged to come down here, but this spot, it just seems to have bikes every Sunday, so we'll see what happens. Yeah, my overall general review is like, yeah, get one if you're considering it. I don't have any complaints. Like I say, the couple of things that I mentioned that have been an issue, or potential issue if you like, they're minor, and I'm happy with the bike. As an overall bike, it's just a good bike. I like it. I like the way everything about it, the way it handles, the power, the acceleration, the grunt, so the torque, you know, styling, like I said, everything. I'm quite happy with it. This mate, he's obviously going down to where I'm going. Yeah, so I would say get one. The fuel economy is a bit shit though, I will say that, but everyone that you kind of speak to about it is they're kind of a bit like, well, hang on a minute, you've bought a bike that's known to be a hooligan bike, and it's just meant to be a bit of a insane beast, so you can't be factoring in fuel economy. They're kind of a bit like, look, if you want to have a real boring, dull bike, go and buy one, and then you're going to get some good fuel economy. But if you're going to buy a beast like this, you just have to accept it's not amazing. And when I bought it, the reason that I thought it was going to be okay fuel economy wise for me is because it had the same miles per gallon as my 600 Gixxer. So although this bike's a lot newer, and I personally would expect it to be better on fuel than it is, because it's a bigger engine than my 600, but it had the same amount of miles per gallon, I just thought, okay, that's alright for me. But it ain't great. Like I say, it's I think what they did is, I think for the next version of my bike, still an MT-09, but let's say the 2020 model, I'm going to say, they did improve fuel economy, and I think that's because it perhaps was mentioned by reviewers or customers or whatever you want to call it, owners. So yeah, fuel economy isn't great, but like I say, it is a good bike. I like it, and I would advise anyone to get one if they're considering it. I mean, if I had to give like a star rating or like review rating out of 10, yeah, I give it a good 8 or 9 or 10 out of 10. You know, like I say, it does what it's meant to do. It's it is what it is. And like I say, the thing about the starting thing, like I say, yes, that is an issue, but mine's gone away now, so it's an intermittent sort of random fault. I don't know why it did it. Like I say, I can only assume lack of use, really. I'm in no hurry, so I'm just going to let this car pull out. This guy's guiding someone out, because obviously they can't see where they're reversing. Whack it up into neutral. Yeah, gearbox is good on this bike. Got no issue with the gearbox. 6-speed, so that's quite nice. Yeah, gearbox is good. Like I say, handling's good. Styling looks good. It's a Yamaha, so that's good. I suppose one actual negative, because like I say, I'm always trying to chuck in some negatives, I suppose. The wheels. So the wheels, like I say, I love the colour of the wheels. The paint is fucking lovely. But my matey that did my MAT was looking at the wheels, and he was like, I think he even changed my tyres. So he was like, oh, yeah, like, the paint's a bit soft, he goes. Yeah, he said the paint's a bit soft. So I suppose that's one thing to factor in, that the paint might be a bit soft on these wheels. But yeah, anyway, I'm next to a KTM here, or a bit closer, like, can't be doing that. And like I say, hopefully you can see down there, there's a fucking shitload of bikes, and that's what I always find down here at this spot, which is good, even though, like I said, it's Mother's Day. So there you go. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I love it making these little videos, and I'll see you on the next one.